We're happy amigos, no matter where he goes. The 1, 2, and 3 goes. We're
Summer 1995, you're digging through garage sale boxes when the seller pulls you aside, whispering about a collection of banned Disney cartoons hidden beneath family-friendly classics. The Walt Disney Company has spent decades burying controversial cartoons that don't match their wholesome image. These are 10 Disney productions so problematic they disappeared from public view forever.
Wait a bit, laddie. You're going to save a bit of that, aren't you?
Sure.
10. The Spirit of 43. During World War II, Walt Disney turned his animation studio into a propaganda machine, and Donald Duck became Uncle Sam's most enthusiastic tax collector. The Spirit of 43 presented Donald facing a moral choice between spending his paycheck on personal pleasures or paying taxes to support the war effort.
Start saving right away to meet your tax payments.
Listen, chum.
The cartoon featured two competing influences, a zoot-suited spendthrift encouraging Donald to blow his money, and a stern, patriotic figure urging him to pay his taxes. The message was clear. Good Americans pay their taxes without question, and anyone who doesn't is practically helping Hitler win.
Spend it. Shoot the works.
Nay, you must save it. Spend! Save!
While the animation quality was typical Disney excellence, the heavy-handed political messaging made it uncomfortable viewing once the war ended. The cartoon treated tax compliance as a moral imperative and painted any financial hesitation as unpatriotic. Disney quietly retired it from circulation, recognizing that wartime propaganda doesn't age well in peacetime. Modern audiences would find the cartoon's overt political messaging jarring, coming from a company that now carefully maintains political neutrality. It represents a time when Disney openly served government interests rather than pure entertainment.
Aha, here comes the prince.
9. Education for Death. In 1943, Disney created their darkest wartime cartoon, a disturbing examination of how Nazi Germany indoctrinated children. Education for Death, the making of the Nazi, followed a young German boy named Hans as he was systematically brainwashed by the Hitler Youth Program. The cartoon showed Hans learning to worship Hitler, reject compassion, and embrace violence as patriotic duty. Scenes depicted children being taught that mercy was weakness and that unquestioning obedience to the state was the highest virtue. The animation style deliberately contrasted Disney's usual warmth with cold mechanical imagery representing fascist ideology. While the cartoon won critical acclaim for its anti-Nazi message, Disney realized they had created something too psychologically disturbing for their brand. The cartoon's realistic depiction of child indoctrination was genuinely unsettling, showing the systematic destruction of a child's natural empathy and humanity. Post-war audiences found the cartoon too intense for family viewing, and Disney quietly shelved it. The company recognized that even well-intentioned political messaging could be too heavy for their core audience. Education for Death proved that Disney's animation skills could create genuinely disturbing content when applied to serious subjects.
where he goes. The 1, 2, and 3 goes. We're always together.
8. The Three Caballeros. Disney's 1944 follow-up to Saludos Amigos was supposed to strengthen relationships with Latin American countries, but instead created a minefield of cultural insensitivity and inappropriate content. The Three Caballeros featured Donald Duck joining Jose Carioca and Panchito Pistoles on a tour of Latin America that included some surprisingly adult themes. The film's problems began with its cultural representations, stereotypical depictions of Mexican and Brazilian culture that reduced complex societies to sombreros, piñatas, and dancing girls. Donald's interactions with live-action actresses became uncomfortably suggestive, with the duck displaying obvious romantic interest in human women in scenes that pushed boundaries of appropriate children's entertainment. The mixing of animation and live action created surreal sequences where cartoon characters pursued real actresses in ways that seemed more adult-oriented than family-friendly. Donald's behavior throughout the film was aggressive and inappropriate, far from his usual mischievous but harmless persona. Disney has struggled with how to present the film in modern releases, often editing sequences or adding contextual warnings. The movie represents a period when Disney's international diplomacy efforts conflicted with their family entertainment values, creating content that satisfied neither goal effectively.
Are you guys here for the Three Candelabras show? In case you didn't know, I'm dating the third candelabra.
7. Victory through air power. Alexander de Seversky's book about strategic bombing found an unlikely champion in Walt Disney, who turned the military theory into a 1943 animated feature advocating the systematic aerial bombardment of Japan. Victory Through Air Power was Disney's most militaristic production, essentially arguing that massive bombing campaigns were the key to winning World War II. The film combined educational segments about aviation history with graphic depictions of proposed bombing strategies. Disney's animators created detailed sequences showing how strategic bombing could cripple enemy infrastructure and force surrender. The climax featured an American eagle destroying a Japanese octopus in imagery that was both beautiful and disturbing. While the film impressed military officials and won technical acclaim, Disney quickly realized they had created something fundamentally different from family entertainment. The movie's explicit advocacy for warfare strategies made it inappropriate for children, while its propaganda elements made it embarrassing in peacetime.
Last in line as usual, eh, Humphrey? Listen up! As soon as I blow this whistle, it will be time to fish.
6th, Sunflower Sequence from Fantasia. Disney's 1940 masterpiece Fantasia contained a sequence so problematic that the company has spent decades trying to erase it from history. In the Pastoral Symphony segment, centaurs frolicked in an idealized ancient Greece, but original versions included a small black centaur named Sunflower who served the white centaurs as a servant, polishing hooves and grooming the hair of the white female centaurs. The character reinforced harmful stereotypes about black people being naturally suited for service roles, even in mythological fantasy settings. Disney began editing Sunflower out of prints in the 1960s, initially through crude cropping that sometimes left floating hands visible in scenes. Later restorations completely removed the character, with new animation filling the gaps. Modern versions of Fantasia show no trace of Sunflower's existence. The company has never officially acknowledged the character's removal, preferring to pretend the problematic content never existed.
Is this Nazi land so good? Would you leave it if you could? Yeah, this Nazi land is good. We would leave it if we could.
5th, Der Führer's Face. Donald Duck's 1943 encounter with Nazi Germany won Disney an Academy Award, but the cartoon's Nazi imagery and content have made it too controversial for modern distribution. Der Führer's Face depicted Donald living in Nazi Germany, forced to work in a munitions factory while subjected to constant propaganda and surveillance. The cartoon featured extensive Nazi imagery, including swastikas, Hitler portraits, and stormtrooper uniforms. While clearly anti-Nazi in message, the detailed depiction of fascist symbols and the catchy title song made Disney uncomfortable about modern screenings. The cartoon's climax revealed Donald's experience as a nightmare, but the realistic depiction of Nazi life was disturbing, regardless of context. Post-war audiences found the cartoon's Nazi content too intense for family viewing, even in an anti-fascist context. The Academy Award win made it impossible to completely ignore, but Disney has rarely screened it publicly since the 1940s. The cartoon represents Disney's most direct engagement with contemporary politics, using their animation skills to create effective anti-Nazi propaganda. Saludos Amigos, Disney's 1942 Good Neighbor policy film, was created to improve U.S.-Latin American relations during World War II, but its cultural depictions have made it increasingly problematic for modern audiences. Saludos Amigos followed Donald Duck and Goofy on a tour of South America that reinforced numerous cultural stereotypes. The film presented Latin American countries through a distinctly American tourist perspective, focusing on exotic elements while ignoring complex social and political realities. Donald's encounters with local customs often portrayed him as superior to native practices.
Howdy, strangers.
While Goofy's Gaucho segment reduced Argentine culture to cartoon comedy, the movie's anthropological approach treated Latin American cultures as curiosities for American entertainment, rather than respecting them as complex societies. Voice acting often used American actors attempting accents rather than authentic representation, and musical numbers relied heavily on stereotypical imagery. Disney has struggled with how to present the film in modern releases, often adding disclaimers about historical context. The movie represents well-intentioned cultural diplomacy that inadvertently perpetuated the same patronizing attitudes it was supposed to overcome, making it embarrassing for contemporary viewing despite its historical significance. Dumbo's Crow Sequence.
It's a pretty Hey!
The 1941 classic Dumbo contained a sequence that has become one of Disney's most discussed controversies: the group of crows who befriend the baby elephant. While the crows ultimately serve as helpful characters who teach Dumbo to fly, their portrayal relied heavily on racist stereotypes that made the sequence problematic for modern audiences. The lead crow was originally named Jim Crow in early scripts, directly referencing the segregation laws that oppressed African Americans. The crows spoke in exaggerated dialect, performed in minstrel show style, and were coded as racial caricatures through their design and behavior. Voice actor Cliff Edwards, who was white, performed the lead crow using speech patterns associated with black performers. The sequence became more controversial as civil rights awareness grew, with critics noting that the helpful crows were still portrayed through demeaning stereotypes. Disney has handled the controversy by adding content warnings to modern releases rather than editing the sequence, acknowledging the problematic elements while preserving the film's historical integrity. The crow sequence represents Disney's complicated relationship with racial representation, showing characters who are ultimately positive but depicted through harmful stereotypical imagery that reflected the prejudices of their era.
We hear about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Mammy.
2. Coal Black and the Seven Dwarfs. Bob Clampett's 1943 cartoon for Warner Brothers was actually distributed by Disney in some markets, making it part of Disney's most shameful legacy. Coal Black and the Seven Dwarfs reimagined Snow White as a jazz-influenced story featuring entirely black characters, but depicted them through grotesque racial caricatures that represented the worst of 1940s animation. The cartoon featured exaggerated physical features, minstrel show behaviors, and stereotypical characterizations that reduced African American culture to offensive comedy. Characters were named with racist puns, and the entire production treated Black Americans as sources of humor rather than human beings worthy of dignified representation. While some have argued the cartoon showcased Black musical talent and featured prominent African American performers, the overall presentation was undeniably racist and harmful. The cartoon became part of the infamous Censored 11, Warner Brothers cartoons permanently withdrawn from circulation due to racist content.
If you please, we are Siamese if you don't.
1. Song of the South. At number 1 sits Disney's most forbidden film, Song of the South, the 1946 movie so controversial that Disney has spent decades pretending it doesn't exist. The film combined live action and animation to tell stories featuring Uncle Remus, a formerly enslaved man who entertained white children with folk tales on a post-Civil War plantation. The movie's problems were immediate and lasting. It presented an idealized version of the antebellum South, where formerly enslaved people seemed content with their circumstances and eager to serve white families. Uncle Remus was portrayed as a happy storyteller rather than acknowledging the brutal realities of slavery and its aftermath. The film's Brer Rabbit segments became beloved through Disney theme park attractions, but the movie itself has never been released on home video in the United States. International releases have been rare and controversial, with critics arguing that the film romanticizes slavery and perpetuates harmful myths about American history. Disney's vault contains more than beloved classics. It holds evidence of entertainment industry's troubled past, reminding us that even magical kingdoms have dark histories.